Okay, and today our moderator will be Miss Faye Penn, and Faye Penn is dubbed New York City's official career guru by Refine 29. Faye Penn is the executive director of Women.nyc, an ambitious program powered by the New York City Economic Development Cooperation that aims to help women of all background, ages, and abilities and identities thrive in their careers, run businesses, and launch startups. One of the Women.nyc's recent initiatives is Venture 50 Plus, a free entrepreneurial boot camp created specifically for women in midlife and beyond. Other Women.nyc programs have included free salary negotiation programs offered across the city, free coding classes for New York City moms, childcare will be provided, and a guide to free and low cost tech training around the city. Faye pivoted to public service in 2018 from a role as a digital executive at Lifetime Television. Previously, she was a staff editor for titles including In Style, New York Magazine, The New York Post, and The New York Observer. She has also been a small business owner as the founder of the blog Brooklyn, the creator of a popular series of beer, wine, and cocktail passports to New York bars. She lives in Brooklyn with 3 kids and a border collie mix, and drums while Bethel, New York. Thank you, Faye, for being with us, and she will introduce our panel. And before that, I'll just play a short video from the Borough President.
So I'm sorry, do I introduce the panelists now and then you play the video, or you're playing the video now?
I'm gonna play the video now and then.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening. I am Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. I am pleased to join in partnership with Women.nyc and the New York City Economic Development Corporation as we host tonight's panel in celebration of Women's History Month. Although strong, fearless, and trailblazing women are worthy of celebration every day, it is fitting that we spend a special month to recognize women's history and contribution to culture and society at large. Throughout history, women have had to overcome roadblocks that no man has ever had to surmount. This ability to pivot, adjust, juggle, conform, and reform is what makes their place in history so important. Ida B. Wells was one such woman. Born into slavery just months before emancipation, Ida transformed her status from victim to victorious. She dedicated her life to the fight for equal rights and women's rights. She did so through the power of the pen and her skills as a journalist. She left the South in fear for her life because of her crime of being black, outspoken, and a woman in the 1890s. She settled in Brooklyn, where she published numerous manifestos against lynching in the black newspaper that she edited. Last March, Gold Street in downtown Brooklyn was renamed Ida B. Wells Place, a permanent marker where her residence and office once stood. Thank you all for joining tonight's discussion and for contributing to this celebration of women. Please enjoy your evening and happy Women's History Month.
Thank you, Faye.
Thank you, virtual Borough President Adams. That was a lovely address. I am very happy to be here with this incredible panel of women. We're gonna have a great time. One thing I love about Zoom is that you are part of the conversation. I want to say at the outset, keep that chat going. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your thoughts. We'll have a question and answer after this. Our Deputy Director, Jasmine Baker, is going to be helping us moderate the chat. And so want to hear everything that's on your mind. I'm going to take a minute to introduce Women.nyc, and we will then introduce our panelists, and we'll get going. So Women.nyc is part of the New York City Economic Development Corporation, and we are an ambitious program created to make sure that the city remains the best place in the world for women of all backgrounds, ages, abilities, and identities to thrive in their careers, run businesses, and launch startups. We have an event tomorrow night also with the Women's Co-working Space Luminary. This is an event on networking and bringing your whole self to your networking. And we have a really interesting and diverse set of panelists, and you can sign up for that on the Women.nyc website. It's under events, and it is also free. And we will be having many more such events through the coming year. This is a tough time. I wanted to start by acknowledging that this pandemic has landed harder on women. There's more women who are unemployed. Some data came out from the controller's office last week that said that more than half of women who take care of kids in New York City have downsized their careers during the pandemic, working fewer hours. We all have a lot on our plates right now. Way too many women have been laid off. The statistics of layoffs are scary and troubling, and I know a lot of people here, or some people here, have had that happen. We see you. We are here for you, and our hope is that you find something really valuable and thoughtful and interesting to take to your next move. And I just want to say there is a next move. I know how tough things are right now, but there is absolutely a great next move for everybody here who's joining us tonight. There's the economy's restarting, things are opening up, hiring is picking up. It's going to get better. So I just want to reinforce that. I know when I've been struggling in my career, and I think we all have, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, that was really important to keep reminding myself there's something great around the corner, and things are going to get better. So I want to introduce our amazing panelists. This is a fantastic group. Really excited to have all of them join us tonight, and really excited to have all of you join us tonight too. Everyone who's tuned in, you're part of it. So thank you. I'm going to start by introducing Christine Siracusa, who is a Brooklyn-based food and product photographer whose goal with every shot is to stoke desire. She delivers bold, dynamic photographs and snappy video content that bypasses the brain and goes straight for the belly. Her work spans commercial and editorial, including imagery for cookbooks, websites, blogs, e-commerce, social media, and marketing materials. And she's a former musical theater actress who has a keen eye for storytelling, color, light, and movement. And she has an amazing story about starting a business in her apartment, basically. And she's been at every major media outlet over the last few years, and I'm excited to have her with us. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Cynthia Medina-Carson is one of our favorite salary negotiation experts. She did many of the salary workshops with us. She's a salary transparency maven, a career coach, and a recruitment expert. She started Wagner because she saw firsthand how the lack of salary information created information barriers and anxiety in the workplace. Professionals and executives kept asking the same question: who can I ask about salaries? And the mission of Cynthia's company is to create and advocate for information transparency at all levels of the workplace. And prior to her move into talent, she'd worked in international relations for the Department of the Treasury, Homeland Security, and JP Morgan. She served in the Peace Corps in Nicaragua. She's also the founder of the Cheeky Monkey Club, a networking club for women who hate to network. She's a board member in her hometown Girls Inc. and hosts a market makerspace in her basement studio. It looks very clean. That must not be your basement studio. Makerspace sounds okay. And she is a graduate of Georgetown and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Welcome, Cynthia. It's really nice to see you again. Next up is Zara. Zara Watson Law is a modern legal team guiding digital entrepreneurs through the legal nuances of trademarking their ideas. Zara knows how frustrating it can feel to try to fit your career into a box while marching to the beat of your own drum. That's exactly what led her to close the door on a thriving corporate legal career in order to pursue what truly encompassed all the skills and ambition in her wheelhouse, serving digital entrepreneurs. Her entrepreneurial focused philosophy integrates intellectual expertise and small business savvy to provide a comprehensive suite of trademarking registration and contract templates. The firm has played an integral role in legally supporting hundreds of businesses from all 50 states and countries around the world. And in 2020, they landed on the Super Lawyers Rising Stars list. Welcome, Zara. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you here because in addition to telling your own pivot story, I think people need to hear about the benefits of branding and protecting your work, especially if you're starting your own business. And next I want to introduce Busayo. Busayo Olupona is a fashion designer and attorney. She is the founder of Busayo NYC, a Brooklyn-based fashion brand that has two parallel guiding principles: a complete obsession and celebration with colorful prints and the amplification of traditional Nigerian culture. Busayo NYC creates its textiles in collaboration with Nigerian artisans. She believes in prints and textiles that are dynamic, colorful, joyful, and have a point of view. She's currently being sold at Saks Fifth Avenue, Shopbop, online, and in special boutiques throughout the country. And she has dressed Madonna, Dr. Angela Davis, Lupita Nyong'o, Alfred Woodard, and Wuma Masaku. Her work has appeared on Saturday Night Live and The Bold Type. And she is a graduate of NYU Law School and the Haas School of Business, University of California, Berkeley. And she is my colleague at the New York City Economic Development Corporation, which I still can't get my head around. I've never met a lawyer and a fashion designer in one. I've met many lawyers and many fashion designers, and no one who does both so well. So I'm actually going to start. The first question I have for all the panelists is, in 3 minutes or less, tell your pivot story. And I'm going to work backwards. Busayo, I'm really excited to have you here because you're pivoting in place. You have your day job as an attorney, and you have a collection in Saks. So tell us about your pivot story.
Okay, so I think before we get, the fundamental thing we have to start with is the pivot story has been long. I think that's really critical for me in that 2011 was when long story, the desire was planted in my heart. I'm very new agey, so there'll be a lot of talk about universe and all that stuff. But the desire was planted in my heart to start this company. And I was terrified. I knew nothing about fashion. I didn't know how it works. And I remember saying to one of my colleagues at Cleary Gottlieb, this was the law firm I was working at the time, I was really miserable and unhappy. And I said to him, I don't know how to become a fashion designer. It's something I want to do. I don't know how to do it. And he looked at me and he goes, well, how did you become a lawyer? And I said, well, I read books and I went to classes and I studied. And he got up and he walked out of my office, without saying anything. And I was like, what a jerk. Anyway, I said a lot of things, but he made his point, which was the same way that we become a lawyer, the same way that we become a doctor, the same way that we do anything is actually how we begin to pursue our heart's desire. But the challenge, right, with these fields that seem a little less defined is that the road is not always clear, right? So 2011, I started the brand literally by having a pop-up, small little pop-up, and we just do pop-ups at that time. And actually, you know what, can we start the slide? Because that will help me tell the story better. Cool. So this is, I wanted to tell the story of the brand in pictures. So I wanted to show you guys, next slide, please. So this is our first collection when we started. I didn't know anyone. I started telling everybody that I wanted to do this. So people started coming into my world. A photographer came. I didn't even know how you measured photography, what you do. There was something at the time called Model Mayhem. I put an ad out on Model Mayhem, and that's how I got the models. But this is literally a friend's boyfriend who shot our first collection. And this is the quality of the photography. Next shot, please. Again, this is in a backyard in Brooklyn of a boutique that was in Greenpoint. This is, this was our studio. Next slide. This is, this we actually rented a studio space. There's also a cattail, I'm sorry. Next slide, please. So by 2013, I think we had improved a little bit. This was, I went to a party and I met this woman and I was telling her, she's like, I'm a photographer. And I was like, oh, I need a photographer. And that's how I found the person to do this. Also, I got a book called Fashion Designer Survival Guide. And I was literally following everything it was telling me to do. So whatever field that you're thinking about pivoting in, my number one advice would be, what are the books that are practical and give you specific advice for that space? And are you reading those on a daily, consistent basis? So next slide, please. So this is the same photographer. This is the outside shot as opposed to the other one where we were inside. Next slide, please. I love this picture. So at this point, we were, I felt like we weren't developing creatively. This person who shot this photo was a fellow associate attorney at Cleary, who was also making her own pivot from being a Cleary attorney to working in product imagery and brand development. And she needed a case study for a course. And so she wanted to use, so she ended up using my brand. So she ended up doing the shoot for us. And the logo that we still use till today is the logo that she used for that class project. So another major thing in pivot, just for me, it's important that you leave with like tons of things to do and are applicable. Tell every single person that you're doing this, because that's how Universe brings resources to you. So Priya ended up just being a lifesaver at a time where I felt like the brands, like our vision, our image was just not kind of keeping up with like what was happening in the marketplace. Next slide. This again, somebody who showed up to a pop-up shot this one. Same thing, talking about what I'm doing to literally everybody and their mother. Next slide, please. So this is also from that time. Next slide. And then we get to 2020, and actually so I go back to Nigeria quite a bit, and we begin to, at this point, probably 2018, I started doing all the shoots in Nigeria. So all the photography you see now is a young Nigerian photographer that my partner met on Facebook. And that's who's been doing all of our shoots. And then last slide. He did this as well. This is Nick. He's sort of like our creative director. And last one, I think the last one is a picture of Madonna, just because when that happened, I couldn't believe that. So so you see this huge trajectory from that beginning shots till now. And I think I've gone way more than 3 minutes. So I will stop there. But I would just say major takeaways from the journey for me has been using a lot of books and a lot of resources to learn what I didn't know that I needed, like the things I didn't know.
Did you know Madonna was going to be wearing your dress, or you just saw a picture of her wearing your dress?
No, I didn't know. I did not know. She had just dyed her hair pink, and she was in New York Post with the new pink hair. The day before, I had looked at that picture. So when the morning that she wore it, I picked up my phone and I was like, why is this picture of Madonna from the day before on my phone with the pink hair? And then I looked at her collar and I just started cursing. And then I have a showroom in LA and they did not tell me that that was going to happen. I just literally didn't know what to do. So I just started screaming and cursing, which I won't repeat here. But it was a huge shock. And then how do you top that? She was such an icon for me, and she is such an icon from childhood. So I didn't know how to top. I still don't know how to top that.
You will.
Amen.
Thank you, Busayo. Christine, tell us your pivot story in 3 minutes or less.
Hi, okay, so I was an actress in my 20s and early 30s. And when my husband and I decided to start a family, I decided to stay home as a mom and raise my child. I did not expect to stay in that position for 13 years, but another child and 13 years later, I wanted something else, but I just really didn't know what. I just, sort of thought to myself, well, what have I been doing for 13 years? And cooking came up. So I started a food blog because I like to cook and I like to write. And I really was just wanting a creative outlet and a hobby. I really wasn't thinking past that at all. At the same time, I was actually just trying to, I call that sort of like that period, my bid for normalcy. Like I was just trying to like apply to a job. Like I told a friend, I was like, I have a vocation. I have 2 vocations. I don't need another vocation. I need a job. So I started applying to like the Container Store and the co-op down the street. And I couldn't even get seen for any of those. So I was like, well, maybe the universe is telling me that, I should sort of strike out on my own. So I didn't feel like I could make my food blog into a major business. I didn't feel like an expert in the recipe development space. But the thing that I loved the most about blogging and seemed like the most valuable skill for other people that I could serve was photography. And so I had started reaching out to other photographers that I follow on Instagram and just being like, can I talk to you about how you run your business? And I think the first photographer I met with, like 2 days later, was like, I'm moving in-house. Do you want some of my clients? And I was like, I guess this is what I do now. Yeah. So that's that. I think I went under 3 minutes.
You're being a little modest, Christine. Can you tell us some of the brands that you have been photographing for? Where can we see your work?
Yeah, or can she show the website? Remember, that was awesome.
I did.
I'll put up your work, Christine, because I do have some of your work. So I'll put up some so we can see it.
Okay, awesome. So brands. So I shoot for a brand, a Za'atar condiment brand called Zesty Z. They're Brooklyn based. I really love working with local small businesses. I just have a soft spot for small business and startups. And I shoot for a boozy ice cream brand called Tipsy Scoop. And they are skyrocketing right now because they have a shipping business. So a lot of people during COVID have been, sending their best friend boozy ice cream in the mail, which is great. You love Tipsy Scoop. Awesome. So do I. And then I just started shooting for a local coffee brand. And gosh, I've shot for granola, bare naked granola, and Outshine popsicles and things like that.
Amazing. Thank you. Also, no one has sent me any boozy ice cream. I just put in that I'm available for people to send me boozy ice cream.
Duly noted.
Zara, tell us about your pivot story. You pivoted from corporate law. You went out on your own very early in your career. Tell us about your aha moment and what came afterwards.
Yes, so I was going to say, I hope I can keep this under 3 minutes. So I worked for a special education law firm right out of law school. And long story short, I was not happy there. It wasn't as rewarding as I thought it was going to be. I started thinking to myself, okay, what can I do that I'm passionate about? I love writing. I had a lifestyle blog that I had started while in law school. I loved photography. I loved all things fashion, similar to Busayo. And I said, how can I combine my interest of the law with my passions? So I basically decided to start out on my own. I literally formed my law firm in 2017, specializing in trademark law. I did not take any trademark courses or any intellectual property courses while in law school, believe it or not. I literally taught myself everything. So I read books, I took courses, I reached out to different people. I had several mentors. And now it's been 3 years and my law firm is doing really, really well. I represent mostly entrepreneurs, a lot of digital entrepreneurs, and many of them are pivoting. My firm skyrocketed during COVID. A lot of people who had passion projects and side projects basically came to me and said, how do I start my business legally? So literally from forming their LLC to trademarking. I work with a lot of clients, with the business formation process. So that's my pivot story.
Thank you so much, Zara. And Cynthia, you've had like 5 pivots. Tell us about how you got to where you are and what was your sort of moment of clarity along the way.
Yeah, no clarity. I will be showing my the 2 slides, but before I do that, I do want to speak to what Christine mentioned in terms of hitting that moment where you don't know what to do or how to get out of it, or just like I'm applying, I'm like kind of fun, like how the heck do I get out and do the thing that I'm supposed to do? So I feel like there's a lot of people hit that moment of, I won't say the nadir, but where you're like, how do I get out? So that's happened to me a few times. So we'll do the slide, and then I have a few things, that I've seen. I work with a lot of women and women who are trying to exceed. My thoughts on what, a few points. And I think Busayo mentioned a few, and Zara mentioned a few in terms of like speaking out loud and getting help. So can we see my 2 slides? Therese, or I can share them myself. I mean, if I can share this, I can do it myself.
Yeah, you can
Okay,
share.
cool. All right, 1 second, everyone. It'll be fast and painless. Well, as long as I do it correctly. Okay. So a little bit about me and my pivot story. The reason I put in a slide is because it's happened a few times, and people are always wondering when they look at my background, like, how is it I've done so many different things? I do want to say that one reason that I feel comfortable moving into whatever space I want to, and kind of the way I think about life, is I feel like it's a very long journey. I feel like wherever I am now, my job and the things around me will reflect where I am, as opposed to try and go after the job or thing that's out there. I'm the first in my family to go to college, right? I have 23 aunts and uncles, over like 100 first cousins. And out of all those people, I was the first to go. That's important for my story, because as great as it is to have people in front of you who have done things, I had no one. So I've always felt like everything I did was kind of for the first time and on my own. So there's good and bad in that, right? Always been focused on service and women. And so I know Faye mentioned I served in Nicaragua in the Peace Corps. And this was after like trying to figure out, who am I? What am I going to do? What am I drawn to? I had a passion for travel and getting out and serving. And I felt like this was people were going to pay me to serve and travel. The United States government, this is a perfect marriage. They get it, I get it. We're like, this is a perfect place for me to be in this time in my life. When I came back, and it was like grad school, international development, I kind of figured out, I knew what I was going to do. I had set up my whole life. This is the direction. I know where I am. First big pivot, 9/11. Middle grad school, my boyfriend at the time, who was now my husband, was there. And that was such a big change. I felt like, why am I going out to serve the world when I have work to do here in the United States? And that I went, December 11th, that happened December 12th. I went 6 a.m. train to New York City, saw him, found him, make sure he was okay. And the next day went back December 13th and completely changed my career. And that was, a decision that you could see a little bit Peace Corps, but people are like, how are you going from Peace Corps to anti-terrorist financing, NYPD counterterrorism unit, and analysis and data around where the bad money is moving. But as someone mentioned in the chat about transferable skills, it is like, I have the people skills, I have the tech skills. I've always had all the same skills, but what do I want to do with that skill at the time in my life? And so the Treasury, really working hard there. And then from there, became a US Latin America expert on anti-money laundering, moved around, got the highest in the government, and then transferred over, like some people do, to the private sector. So great. It is a private sector. I'm working JP Morgan, my 6 figures, like the world is great. And what happened? 2008 recession. I now lost my great 6-figure job. I have 2 kids under 3. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And I will say, out of all my pivots, this was the hardest and biggest and most important. I literally got stripped to, I was at home, mom, my husband's out working a lot. And I'm like, who am I? What am I anymore? I used to be this person. What am I now? I just started designing. And actually I didn't even say this yesterday when we were talking about this. My creative outlet, I just had to do something, like Christine said. I designed coats. I actually designed coats for 2 winters on my own, because I was trying to figure out who I was going to be. And I gravitated to whatever I loved at that moment. But the other part of that is I started working with people, working with small companies, really being around. And then lots of friends were saying, hey, I have a business that's growing. You're so good with people. You've been working with all these small businesses. Will you recruit for me? And I remember thinking, I don't know if I have the skills, but how about this? How about if the first one I do for free? And then after that, you're going to pay me. Because I kept hearing, it was common, almost the same messaging that people were saying to me. And I felt like the universe was trying to give me something to do with myself. So I started recruiting. I ended up working with a lot of small recruiters, fast growing tech startup, all in San Francisco. It was 5 people, 10 people, 50 people, 100 people. Ended up working at Nielsen, right? 10,000, 30,000, multinational. And it was really great and wonderful. It was exactly where I needed to be in my life. Building organizations, growing them, thinking about that. But what happened, back to my service-oriented roots, I saw in the workforce stuff I didn't like. Like, I felt like women were being underrepresented. Women did not know how to negotiate. Like, I felt like there was a different calling in here that I kind of morphed into. And that's how I started my own company, Wager. Focus on women's salary, focus on transparency in the workforce, focus on how to do that stuff that I've been doing past, 10 years, but better. Where there's kind of an equal place for us to be. So that is my, that's the summary of all the pivots I've done, even there's been a little more here and there. And now that I work with a lot of successful people, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, I work with executives, I want to give you just 6 things that I've seen that maybe, and I feel like I've heard it in some of these conversations. When you're thinking about pivots, how to start doing that. I want to be honest about what's driving your change. Some people just need a new job. Maybe they hate their boss, maybe they hate their supervisor. It's okay to don't jump into something because you're just trying to get out of one thing. But like Busayo, she's like, I had a burning passion. Great. Once you have a burning passion, start saying it out loud, which is something she mentioned. Start telling everyone, start saying it out loud. I've been thinking about this. I've been working out this. What do you think? And people will come. The minute you ask for help, the whole universe starts to show up. So be careful when you ask for it. Be ready for it. When you post something on Facebook, all of a sudden there's 100 people saying, hey, I want to help you. Pivots don't have to be 360. Sometimes people feel like you have to completely change your whole comfort zone. I don't think that just maybe a little zhuzh to the left, zhuzh to right. Start reading books, start doing a blog, start doing something, a pop-up, like she mentioned. Do something small to get your teeth around it, right? Small bites, not like feel like, I just spoke to a person this week who was full on going to quit her job. She's a single mom. I was like, do not quit your job. You got to have a game plan to be able to move to the next thing. And some of us, that's where some of us are. And I think a big thing about this is the journey is long, right? And so small failures are part of a larger piece of what you're trying to do with yourself. So you may think like I started with Coats, but the Coats was a way for me to creative outlet, creative people, start kind of organizing, project management and getting out of wherever I was. So no, it wasn't a failure, but it was part of the bigger, what I wanted to do, maybe in the long run. In the long run, I take all these transferable skills to what I do now. Okay, that's that.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. You always have actionable takeaway that I always appreciate hearing. There's always a new idea there for me when I hear you talk. So I wanted to, I want to go back to you for a minute. Your first slide was designing fashions, right? How did you even take that step? There must have been many steps before your first collection. How did you get there?
So there's some cheats in my story. One is I'm from Nigeria, which has a huge, an active tailoring clothing factory ecosystem, right? And I had started going back to see my family in 2005. So I would go visit. Again, God, universe, whatever, was like, you need to start going back to Nigeria. I really had no idea why. So from 2005, I would buy a ticket, go visit my aunt. She was so paranoid about me being in danger. Like, she would lock me in the house. Like, I didn't even go and do anything. And I would just literally, like clockwork, every year I would buy a ticket for 2 weeks to go hang out with my cousins and get to connect with my family in Nigeria. And so by 2009, 2010, I was making clothes for myself to wear. For me, I wanted clothing that was really at the intersection of my identities, where, was super colorful. But I could also show up with it at Cleary, and it also made sense in the white shoe law firm setting. And those things don't kind of exist in the marketplace, like clothes that are super bright, but also corporate, maybe just short of being inappropriate for the workplace, but really towing that line, right? And I wanted to create that because that's what I wanted to wear. I didn't like any of it. And Cleary's like not the most conservative law firm, but it's still a law firm, you know? So from 2009, 2010, I would literally just make clothes for myself in Nigeria. So the brand, there's a reason the entire brand, everything is made there. And the person who was helping me make clothes then is still the person that's helping me make clothes now. But our scale has just gotten a lot bigger. So from a design standpoint, I mean, I would draw things. I would, you know, kind of like take vintage, take this and that, and be like, let's squish this together. We would do like a rough sketch. He would make it. And, you know, our first initial, you know, collections it was literally making like 50 pieces to sell at the pop-up or like to sell like on the website. And we didn't hold, I still don't hold a ton of stock, like, right? Like, I think that's really important. I mean, this is really specific for fashion, but I think could apply to so many things where people, you don't have to produce the entire thing. Like, make some samples, tell people you make it to order, if this is for a product business, and just put it on the website and get started, right? So, and in the beginning, I mean, you can see like those clothes, like, you're not going to start. I think part of the challenge with pivots is people see the end result, right? They see this story, but they don't see all the mistakes. They don't see the beginning. And I'm really grateful that I started when Instagram wasn't as popular. So I could like make my little thing in a little bubble and not have to show the whole world, right? You know, and the people that were supporting us and buying in those early days were the people from my law firm. I mean, as much as I'm like, it was not the right place for me, I have to say, like, the first people that bought Busayo clothes were people who worked there. You know, I think the point that Cynthia made is huge, which is you tell everyone, and you literally, last year I said, I need more mentorship. I need more guidance. You guys, be careful what you pray for, because by the end of the year, I had like 6 mentors. I was like, okay, Lord, it's okay. I'm good now. Thank you. You know, so that was the other thing. Very early in my journey, I found an amazing woman. Her name is Mercedes Gonzalez, who I'd met. I mean, I made so many mistakes. I went to a Magic, which is a wholesale show. It was terrible, but she spoke there, and she was just a phenomenal mentor. And I just listened to everything she tells me to do, and I just did it. So much of those beginning stages were also guidance from people who are in the marketplace.
It sounds like even though your new field, fashion, is such a departure from law, there are ways that having a day job, working at the law firm, enabled you to pursue this as a pivot. I'd like you to hear about your pivot from working at a law firm to going out on your own. When did you know to make the jump? When did you feel confident that you would be able to succeed in starting your own company?
It was honestly just a knowing, like, as crazy as that may sound, I really was so unhappy. My health was being affected. I said, it's either now or never. And there was just this breaking point that I had. I remember going into one of the partners' offices, and I had this interaction with the client, and things were just not working out. And I said, you know what, this is my chance, this is my opportunity. And I walked into his office. I remember that like it was yesterday. And I told him, I said, you know what, like, thank you so much for this opportunity. You know, unfortunately, it's just not working out. I'm going to go out on my own. And I told him, I said, I'm going to pursue intellectual property law. And he told me, to thine own self be true. And those words have stuck with me ever since. And like I said, it was just a knowing. I said, either I'm going to, when I leave, either I'm going to go and work for another law firm or go out on my own. And I was dating my longtime boyfriend. We've known each other since we were 4 years old. So I said, marriage is definitely on the horizon. I know I'm going to have a child. And actually we do now. I have a 19-month-old daughter. And I said, it's either I work for somewhere else, and I felt like I was going to get stuck there, if that makes sense, or go out on my own. And again, I just knew that that's what I had to do. And it's something that I've always wanted to do. So I just said, this is it. I'm going to take the leap. And I did it. So that's my story.
I love that advice. To thine own self be true. Let's stay there for a minute, because some of the folks in our chat know where they're going and some don't. And Christine, I love your story because you weren't sure where you're going, but you knew you loved to cook, right? Pivoting has to start from, I think it's 3 things, right? what you like to do, what you're good at, and what you're interested in. So how, if for somebody who doesn't know where they want to go, how do they find that direction using their own selves as a compass? Maybe this is a place for you to jump in, Christine, about how cooking turned into a career for you.
Yeah. I think you just start throwing spaghetti at the wall. I think you just look inside yourself and say, what could I do that would make me happy? What would also bring something to the world, like bring, provide a service or fill a hole that you see that, just calls to you, and you just start. And then if it doesn't go anywhere, then you switch again. Like I think Cynthia was saying, it's long. I mean, I remember at 35 thinking that I had to be set for life, and that if I wasn't set for life at 35, I was going to be a failure. And now I'm 51, and I'm like, there's still time. I mean, I've still got like 25, 30 years. So, so follow your gut 100%. Just follow your gut, go, try things, try and make as little of a commitment financially upfront as you can, try and bootstrap things for a little while, and something's going to stick,
Cynthia, where can people go to research? And how do people figure this stuff out? I'm very interested to hear more about your 100 cousins and how in any of your explorations. But cooking, we've all done that to some degree. It's somewhat familiar, but there's this whole world of fields that are unfamiliar, right? How do I know if I would like cybersecurity? How would I know if I'm kind of technical. How would I know if I like coding? Like, it seems like the world is full of online places to learn to beef up your skills. What do you recommend as ways to explore different types of careers when you're still looking?
So I think you got to accept, this is the part that people don't, you have to accept it's messy and weird and like ugly and odd, and you have to be okay with that. I think if you're coming into a messy 6 months of 9 months of exploration, it's not shocking to you. It's not surprising to you. I don't think so. That's not, the hard part is not the doing, right? Because I'm going to learn how to market cookbooks. I like cookbooks. I'm going to buy cooks from all over the world. I'm going to have a marketplace of cookbooks people have never seen. Like, I don't know. They might exist. That's something I've thought about, right? I've never thought about it. I actually don't like cooking. But you would like, what would you do? You're like, I'm going to, so, and I really mean, this is what you do. Like, take a moment. Because right now I'm going to tell you, I'm working on something other. What's my next thing? I've learned a lot about companies, put it this way. I learned about how people interact inside of them. I've learned of unfair things I don't like. I want to do something bigger with that. So I am putting myself, I've written, like, so as an example, I've written to 10 or 15 people who are PhD and professors in this space. I'm trying to figure out what is not, how or why are people not answering something that's really basic in some of these issues? And like, and where am I supposed to be in that? Okay, so that's like that's something I'm working through right now. I don't know where I'm going to take all this that I'm doing, but I'm starting to talk to people about things that are bothering me inside. So if you're Christine or, Busayo is like, I got a passion. All right, I'm just going to like, so this is the way I would say, I got a spreadsheet. I have a spreadsheet for 3 projects that I'm thinking about. I don't know which one I'm going to take. I don't know which one to develop. And what I say is, these are the problems that I see. These are the resources that I'm seeing. These are people I'm going to reach out to. And I start almost like a pipeline. The way you do a pipeline for jobs, you don't know this job. It's an imaginary thing you're going to, or let's say it's a job. And you're like, and these are the people I'm going to talk to, and I'm going to send them emails, and I'm going to start just getting the conversations in my head going. And where do I fit in this thing? So, I can't tell you what your passion is, but I can tell you, But there's a person who was talking on, put a note on the chat about, I have all these transferable skills. I don't know what to do with them. The best thing you have is that you have transferable skills. It's actually harder to get the skills. So you have the skills. So let's say you're a writer. You're like, okay, I'm going to start a blog. I'm going to talk to people who do blogs. I'm going to see if that's even something I want to do. Or if like, I like to cook a lot. I'm going to reach out to people who cook. I'm going to buy cookbooks. I'm going to put recipes together, and I'm going to do a low key version of what I would be if I could. And if it doesn't fly, it doesn't fly. I'm going to realize I hate cooking more than I thought. I actually just want to do it personally. Like stop thinking it's like, I got to make a big decision out here. All you got to do is the next 3 to 6 months. And in the next 3 to 6 months, talk to a lot of people about things you're good at and not good at, and start to asking people, where do you think that fits? Where do you think I fit? You've known me 10 years. Where do you think some of the stuff I do? Do you like the stuff I did? Like if that's the, if you really do not have a path, start talking to people around you who know you and say, are these, I've been thinking that these 2 or 3 things, what did that sound to you when I say that to you out loud, when I say it out loud? It sounds a little trite and simple, but the minute we as women start saying things out loud, things happen. So be careful when you start, people are going to bring their energy to you to make it happen as well. So it's not an answer about where to go. It's an answer. I would say the first thing for me is talking to the first 10 people around you, the next 20 people around you, and keeping a Excel sheet, kind of like a project, like create, what's the job I'm going to create that may not be out there. I can create my own world if I wanted to. And that's what I've always done. So not sure if I answered your question though, Faye.
It's great no matter what you say. I'm telling you. I always have ideas now. Tell me about networking, right? This is something that I love to talk about, is how people think their network is everyone they know at LinkedIn, or the people that they've worked with, or the people that they went to college with, or the people that they went to high school with, or people who tell us some creative places to find networks. Right? Could your network be people in your church, your synagogue, or your mosque? Could your network be the other moms on the PTA with you? Tell us about, does anybody here have a story about how they used their network, maybe in a surprising way, to launch their pivot? And then also I've seen a few comments in the chat about people really being uncomfortable about asking for help. So is there a way to do that feels less kind of icky for people?
Yeah, I have a bunch of ideas for networking. First of all, I don't know if anybody's on Clubhouse. If not, if you don't know what it is, Google it, see if you can get on there. I think for the next 6 months, it's going to be a great, useful tool for networking. It has been for me. I'll put it in the chat. You can also reach out to me if you have more questions about what it is. It's just it's an audio app where people are literally like meeting people, talking about different things, and that's been really helpful in the last year. I think there's a trick that I got from this guy, James Altucher, who I love his book. He wrote a book called Choose Yourself, and I highly recommend that everybody gets it. He's a little bit quirky, a little bit out there, but he talks about how, going through each day, going through someone that you haven't spoken to in your network, someone that you haven't spoken to in the last 6 months, and just sending them a message like, hello, I'm thinking about you, I hope you're well, and offer them something they can use, right? If it's an article that you think is interesting, something that makes you think about them. These are all the people that are already in your life that you have not communicated with for whatever reason. And each day, he says, message 1 or 2 of them so that you are top of mind, even if there's someone that you haven't talked to in a very long time. I still slide into people's DMs all the time. For me, selling clothes has been interesting because usually you do cold calls to boutiques. And then I realized sometimes sliding into a boutique's DM works a little bit better, where I'll say, I've been following you a long time on Instagram. I find what you're doing really interesting. So then they can immediately see my work as well and connect that way. So I really try, I do a lot of kind of quirky things. It's not even that complicated. Like earlier, this is for something we're doing on EDC. We're trying to find an email at my law job. And I was like, well, what? It's easy to find their email. And my colleague was like, no, how would you do that? And I was like, well, the email convention because of their website. There's really 3 or 4 ways that people write emails in this society. First name dot last name, first letter, last name. And we went through all 3. You go to an email tester website, you put all that stuff in there and you see which one is correct. And then you write them an email directly. And she's like, what? I was like, yeah, it's easy. This is one of my law colleagues, so I actually, as I've gotten older, I've become less afraid to reach out. I feel like in my early days, I built up this thing, and it's not because, oh, now the brand is in a bed. No, it's just age. I feel like the older you get, the less you like care whether people are gonna like hang up on you or be mean to you or whatever. So for me, I've noticed that as I've gotten older, I'm not as afraid to reach out to people. And in terms of how to ask for help, you know, with the brand, it wasn't so much asking for help. I would just share what I wanted to do with people, and people themselves would offer to help me, right? It's a bizarre thing. And then for people that you are actually asking actively, I think the rule is always, you should offer that person something. You should always come if it's your first interaction with someone, it shouldn't just be an ask, right? But one thing I used to do when I was looking for work as a lawyer, which I looked for a long time before I finally committed to fashion, was, you know, I would reach out to an alumni or something, and I would say, you know, I've looked at your journey on LinkedIn, and I'm just so curious about your journey and how you did it, right? So again, it's about them, their journey, their story, their experience. And then people usually will offer to help once they've had the opportunity to get to know you and share their story. So it's never so much about, you know, can you help me, or do I want to pick your brain? Like, don't ever say that. It's more of like, if somebody reached out to me right now and said, hey, you know, I'm an attorney at Cleary or wherever, and I'm so curious about how you made the journey from law to fashion. Of course, like, you know, and of course, in that conversation, I'm gonna leave them with something, right? But they didn't actually ask me anything they asked me for 15 minutes of my time, and they did it in a way that was respectful and showed that they had actually researched and understood me. That's the other thing. Make sure you've researched that person before you reach out to them, so that what you're saying makes sense. I'm going to drop the name of the author. I have a lot of books. I'm just going to drop them all in the chat so people have them. I'm a big book nerd.
Faye, can I add something to Busayo in terms of networking? One thing, and it's something I do in a daily, like if I think of someone, I actually quickly send a text. I was thinking about you, right? And I do that now because I started doing that with my husband because I realized there was a moment where we were not connecting. And then I started to doing that with my family and people. If you think about a person, send something right away. Because who doesn't want to know that they're being thought about, right? Just in general. But what you're doing is you're bringing it to like a bigger, you know, networking outside of your personal space. And I like that. But for those people who are kind of a little bit stuck in like, how do I get out of my own like space or head and get out? I would suggest something very, very simple. If there's a topic you're interested in or something you're kind of good at, I would do a webinar with just 10 friends or a Google Hangout and say, hey, I'm going to talk about this one skill that I like, right? So it's for me, like, I know how to do resumes. If I send a note saying 10, 15 people, you guys, I'm just going to do a quick resume, and even want, you know, critique, people show up and I do something. And by doing that, I'm creating myself as a thought leader on something that people care about. And that's could be a very small way of just building your confidence and people showing up to you where you want to be seen. So, you know, Zara, if she told me I'm going to do, hey guys, I'm just doing a quick webinar, half hour on just things new entrepreneurs need to think about to protect yourself. 100 people show up, and who's not going to know Zara for doing that? And like, right. And so, you know, if you're a reserved person and maybe not shy, but just like, it's not all of us are like that, do something that's small in a way that it does center on you, but you're about to give some free information and get comfortable being the center. Because I think some of us have uncomfortable being that center person and asking for help, but this is your giving. And in a way you've created this beautiful space. So I thought.
That's great advice, right? Anyone can hold a Zoom, right? Everybody has expertise of some kind. See who comes, you know, promote it on LinkedIn, see who comes. Share it with people in your personal network, whatever that looks like. And even if 10 people come, it could be a great conversation. Because I remember, you know, I was a journalist before one of my own many pivots. And anytime I wanted to explore a field, I'd do a story on it. So I would do an article and have it published somewhere, and that would give me a chance to get free advice from people in that field, and I would also make all these contacts. So that was what I was good at, and it helped me get somewhere else. It's leveraging what you're good at to get where you want to go. Zara, I'm very curious. You need to go to questions in a few minutes, but I want to hear, Zara, tell us about your networking.
I was actually going to jump on.
Sorry?
I said I was actually going to jump on and share.
Great.
I was going to say, leverage who you know. That's actually how I built my law practice. I literally went on Instagram and just started. Well, first of all, I went on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. This is in 2017 when there were not that many attorneys in the digital space marketing. So I literally just put a blast out there, said, I'm starting my own law firm. These are the services that I provide. And literally from there, people have been referring me clients. I've literally built my practice just by sharing on social media. So I used, the resources that I had, the people that I knew, and the platforms that I have to just put my stuff out there. And of course, when I first started, there aren't that many people signing up, but I just continued. I was very consistent. I think that's also something that's important: consistency and just not giving up, and just continuing to put yourself out there. And here I am today. So just use your network, use who you know, and it'll work out. And another thing I wanted to share, when I first started, I did not have that many mentors. I had reached out to a lot of people, and for whatever the reason, they were not very welcoming. The attorneys that I had reached out to, they were very cold. They said, you're crazy for going out on your own. You need to work for another law firm for XYZ number of years. And it was very discouraging. And I'm sharing that to say, maybe you may not find people to help you. Maybe, for whatever the reason, you may not find mentors, and just continue. Do not give up. If you know in your gut that this is what you're supposed to be doing, you're gonna find a way and you're gonna make it. So just want to share that.
I do just want to ask you one more question, Zara. Your website, your digital presence is excellent. I want to say that it's very, very consistent and clear and decisive. And one of the things that the digital space affords us is the ability to tell our story any way we want. And I just wanted to get some thoughts from you, especially somebody in the brand space and somebody who helps people create their brands and protect them. What's your advice in terms of your digital storefront? How to put yourself out there? What are the best practices?
Very, very important. I think every business owner should think about building a brand, what that means to you, what it's going to look like. So for me, branding, it tells your story, who you are, what you value, what you represent. For me, I think people will kind of get a sense of the kind of service that we're going to provide. So branding is very, very important. Think of your favorite brands. One of my favorite brands, I can think of Nike, right? They're very purpose-driven. They stand for something. You just love their story or the stories that they put out. So, branding it encompasses so many different things, but I think you could just think of, what do I stand for? Who do I want to target? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What's my mission? So I think those are some very important questions to ask, but branding is very, very important.
Definitely is. Thank you. Jasmine, are there some questions that we want to answer in the feed? Anything come up that you think our panelists should weigh in on here?
You guys have answered most of them. I don't have anything open right now, but there were a few that I feel like we can revisit, specifically because there were so many questions about transferable skills. And Cindy had a really great answer for that. I was wondering if Zara, Christina, or Busayo also had any tips for folks on the call on how you could be convincing when you're pivoting to a new industry and you wanna represent your skills in the best way and just kind of prove that you can do this new thing. Do you have any tips for that?
I think it depends on if you're trying to go into a job where there are gatekeepers who are programmed to believe that in order to do this thing, you need to have A, Y, and B, Z, whatever. Or if you are trying to create your own space in a particular field. I feel like if you are trying to create your own space and carve a place for yourself, I wouldn't even pay attention to what the skills that are dictated by that marketplace is, right? Because it's going to take you time to be, when I started, I wasn't close to, certainly not who I am now, or, like if I'd gone to the fashion industry and said, hire me, please, maybe I could have gotten a job as a lawyer in the fashion industry, maybe. But even then it was like, well, you come from a law firm, you've only done finance, you don't know anything about fashion law. Do you have some IP experience? Like there's always gatekeeping that's in those established industries. So for me, it's like, and I think that part of what's amazing about technology is that the gatekeepers, it's really decimated gatekeeping, right? So I do think that depending, if you're trying to then go into a formal job that does require a skill set, then I do think, trying to really communicate and really sitting there and being really intentional about the things that you can do, right? Like, it's so interesting. Law helps me in fashion and fashion helps me in law all the time. I mean, there are ways in which working at EDC, like, we're not very entrepreneurial, right? Like little things like finding an email like that, like what should we even think about that for 2 seconds? Or, I work a lot on the fashion portfolio at EDC. So I have a way of looking at those projects that other lawyers don't have because they don't have the same fashion experience. And in terms of fashion, it's certainly helped me in terms of the legal side, but also just in terms of like being super organized. How do I negotiate my now that we're actually getting into contract work with these different companies, how do I negotiate the contracts and make sure that the terms are beneficial for us? So I think for the person, I remember earlier, I think it really depends on, are there gatekeepers involved? And if there are, then I think this is where networking really comes in. And also, we all know that quote that women, we make sure that we have 80% of the skills, while men will have like 20% and go for the job. So don't also argue yourself out of the job. But I do think networking becomes much more important when you're trying to transfer from a different industry. But honestly, I'm a big fan of like trying to create your own seat at a table right now. I just think that technology is there, like, why not? But don't quit your day job. That's important. And I have not done it yet.
You're not allowed to.
No comment.
Thanks, Busayo.
Anything else?
Does anyone else have something? If not, I just got a question in from Akita. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly, but her question's for all of you guys as well. She said, thanks, Zara, for the advice to keep going despite naysayers. Is there anything that wasn't helpful for you? What are things we should watch out for or ways we can not sabotage ourselves? So sounds like just kind of like, if you guys can reflect back and think about, some of the tougher parts of this journey for you.
I would say mindset. As an entrepreneur, that's everything. Especially with social media now, you have imposter syndrome, you see other people doing a whole bunch of things and it's like, I'm not doing enough. So I would say focusing on your mindset, remembering your why you started, why you're doing what you're doing. Faith, especially as an entrepreneur, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen next month, next year, but just knowing that you have a purpose, you have a mission, and that you're going to, impact a lot of people helps, no matter whatever it is that you're doing. But yeah, mindset. I would say mindset. That's something that I struggled with in the beginning, and it's something I think that it's ever evolving. But I'm so much better from where I was before. But mindset, definitely everything for me, at least.
I want to add. The fear of thinking big is really important. I keep running up against women who refuse to see how big they could be, and no one's around them. At this point, it's been generations of, or tens and 20 years, 30 years, people of hearing that same message, and they're at a point where they want to do something and they're terrified. And I have to say, the person who has given me the most mirror has been my husband, a man. And whenever I talk to men, they have no idea what I'm talking about. They're like, of course you could do that. You could do that tomorrow. What is your problem? There's just no sense. And I when I hear those conversations, I realize it is coming from me. It is not coming from anyone else. And I don't want to say you got to find men to make you strong, but our worries and what we put on actually is really about us and has nothing to do in reality sometimes. Like, think big and think what you want. Say that out loud, because you're going to be your biggest obstacle.
That's great.
And I would just say also find your people. If you have a setback, I know for me, my instinct is to hold it close and not show that I'm feeling vulnerable or dismissed or whatever. But the times that I share it with my colleagues who are my biggest cheerleaders are the times that I get over it much quicker.
If I could just add a few things, that really reminds me. I think in the beginning, I was really scared to show the warts. Like so much of the business has been me doing it like myself, right? So feeling like we had to show like that we're so great, or to the outside world, or that we're at a certain level. And I'm really learning in the last 2 years, I think, with my mentors, to share like when things go wrong, and share all the kind of ugly details with them. There was something I was freaking out over the weekend about, and was talking to my mom, my sister, they were all here, and I was just like, oh my, and then I called my mentor in the morning, and she was like, oh, you should have just called me last night, because it's not a big deal. And she like broke it down in like 2 seconds, and she was just like, you guys all spent the whole night worrying over nothing, like, so really sharing the not so pretty parts with people. And then I think mindset, what I just wanted to follow up on with that is, I listen to a lot of self-development, self-help kind of stuff, and that is what gets me through. It's a little bit cheesy, but like, and I go old school, like there's a guy from the 60s, his name was Jim Rohn, like the 70s, and I would literally play him when I was having to make sales calls. I would literally play him like on repeat. So like listen to, like, he really helps me. I mean, I'm not into Tony Robbins, some people are into that, but like these are like going to those old people who were talking about how to stay positive, how to stay kind of inspired. Those really make a difference for me. It's really cheesy right now. Tim Ferriss, I love his podcast, because those people, they don't see limits. What Cynthia said about men, they'll be talking about all kinds of stuff they're trying to do. And I'm like, what? Like, it's just, they don't see the gates and the limits that we see. And so I listen to someone like Tim Ferriss, like I listen to every single podcast, because it just like cracks my brain open. It's stretching that possibility. And I'm seeing, oh, the hindrances that are there are not real. It's ones that I've been programmed to believe are real, and a lot of men do not see it. So I highly recommend his podcast. I recommend another one called Don't Keep Your Day Job. That's also really good. So I spend my, like, when I'm seriously, Faye, like that, because when you're making sales calls, it's terrible. It's hard to stay motivated when people are mean to you. So like, I really do try to listen to a lot of positive things.
I wanted to jump on. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Make a list. Oh, sorry. I was just responding to something I saw.
Oh, no, I was gonna just piggyback off of what you said, and also what Cynthia said about thinking big. It's so funny, as I'm sitting here, one of my favorite books, I don't know if you guys have read this book. This book is amazing. Like, literally, it was right next to me, but it's all about getting over your fear, and like thinking big, and like how we limit ourselves. It's seriously phenomenal, guys. I'm gonna type it in the chat. It looks like Busayo read this book as well.
I was just
I have not. I want to read it.
If you could drop these, if you have your favorite books, podcasts, recommendations, drop it in the chat. The next question is kind of about that. It's a question for all of you guys about if you can recall any resources or tools that have been helpful to you throughout your journey, such as like, coaching or writing. And kind of another question that I pulled out just from the conversation in the chat related to that is, do you have recommendations? Like Busayo mentioned, Clubhouse, just recommendations of places that people can go where they can either make those connections. And, as Christine mentioned, bootstrapping, it's really important. So like free resources are always great resources. So if you guys have any recommendations, feel free to drop those in the chat. Let's see here.
Jasmine, I think we should make this the last question.
Oh, sure. Okay.
We heard from Busayo and Zara about their resource. I have one, like a book, a podcast, anything like that. I have one I wanted to share. I don't know, Jasmine, if you have one that you want to share as well. But I want to make from Cynthia or Christine, like, what's one thing everyone should go out and do who's on this webinar right now? Okay, LP chatters are starting to weigh in with some great tips.
Yeah, it's going to kill me because, of course, I'm going to get off. There's a podcast that I started listening to a long time ago. It's old. It's not even, but for me, it was inspiration because I had to get out of my head that I could be on my own and do my things. And it's the one that had like FUBU. It's a big one that everyone's story. I don't have to remember it now. But it's a podcast that has.
Is it How I Built This?
Yes, thank you. Exactly. Yeah. I got out of my head by just listening every day to how I built this podcast. And listening to how people built it by scratch, or where they from without any money, and the ups and downs and the failures. And then I realized that I could be part of that group. Like I had nothing that was not, like I had all the stuff too. Like I just didn't have the gumption to start saying out loud that I wanted to be part of not the normal corporate world. And that was hard for me to jump into. So listening to other people do that was where was perfect for me. It inspired me. It made me feel like I could be part of something else. And then I had to get my ducks in a row and start doing the, the spreadsheets and the talking up, but like it allowed me to get out of my head and say, I could be part of those people, and I think so that would be one thing I would do.
And I think you need that space to dream before you get to the spreadsheet. You don't start, maybe you start with the spreadsheet, but some people just need license to explore and dream and think before they get to that action step stage. So Christine, what's your resource? What are you recommending that people need to, like, one thing they can read or listen to or do to get started?
Well, a resource to improve your skills, or a resource to figure out what you want to pivot to?
Anything that's helpful on the journey.
I mean, YouTube. I mean, I am just such a huge fan of YouTube. I feel like I owe 10% of every dollar I make to YouTube, but don't tell them that because they'll probably come after me.
Jasmine, you had a great resource, WeNYC. Tell people what that is.
Yeah, so shameless plug. I love mentioning free resources because New York City has so many for women. So Faye mentioned a few that we have at Women.nyc. If you're thinking in the midst of your pivot that you also want a pay increase or something like that, we have free salary negotiation workshops. Those are available online. WeNYC is our sister initiative over at the Small Business Services Agency, and they have help for female entrepreneurs from funding to mentoring, and that's all free. So I would definitely check those out. And I know that we're pushing up on time. The last question that I will say here is that someone asked how they can get in touch with all of you guys on the panel and Faye and myself. We can drop our social handles in the chat, but we can also try to figure out a way to send that over to you guys in the email after this with the recording of the event.
Yes, we will include it in the email of the recording that we're sending. But if you want to drop it in the chat, we can go ahead and do so now.
So while folks are populating the chat with their social handles, I want to thank our hosts. I want to thank Denise Brown and Lori Louise and Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams for inviting us tonight. I'd like to thank all of our amazing panelists for sharing their wisdom. I'd like to thank Jasmine for doing such a good job moderating the questions. And I want to thank everybody here who took some time to be with us tonight and to figure out what's next with us. We really, really appreciate your joining us tonight. And I think on behalf of everybody here, I want to wish you good luck. Keep coming to things like this, keep having conversations, keep reaching out. Don't do this alone. And also thank you for keeping the chat so great and lively and fun. I don't know what's going to happen when we go back to like rooms where people can't talk the whole time. It's going to be a loss. So have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It was so nice meeting all of you guys.
Everyone connect if you can. Bye.
Bye.